Hi everybody, and welcome to another short lecture on plant classification. In this lecture, you'll learn a little more about families, but the main focus is going to be on infraspecific taxa, subspecies, variety, and form, and why they can be important considerations when you're selecting plants for a landscape. You've already learned that from the late 19th century onwards, plant classification has been organized as a nested hierarchy, as you can see in the diagram here. At the base of the hierarchy, species with similar characteristics are organized into a genus. Remember, the plural of genus is genera. Genera with similar characteristics are arranged into families, and families with similar characteristics are organized into orders, and so on all the way up to kingdom. In modern plant taxonomy, classes and divisions, or phyla, really aren't used very much anymore. Each of these hierarchical ranks is referred to as a taxon, and the plural of taxon is taxa. This word is derived from the ancient Greek word taxis, meaning arrangement, or to place in a certain order. One of the advantages of this ranked system is that it can make plants much easier to identify because each taxon has a set of shared characteristics that distinguishes it from other taxa of the same rank. The International Code of Nomenclature sets out rules for how each of the taxa should be named. In this class, we're mainly concerned only with taxa from the family level downwards. Each family has what's called the type genus. This is the genus whose plants most closely demonstrate the characteristics that are typical for that family. ICN rules state that a family name has to be formed from the name of the type genus plus the suffix ACE. If you look at your class plant list, you'll see that all the family names end in ACE, which is pronounced as if you were spelling the word ace in English, ACE. ACE means resemblance. So for the Rosaceae, the rose family, the type genus is rose, and the family name translates as resembling plants in the rose genus. Most of the families also have names in the most commonly used living languages. For example, in English, Lamiaceae is the mint family, Asteraceae is the sunflower family, and Fabaceae is the pea or bean family. The size of a family can vary hugely, as you can see from the table here. The sunflower family, the Asteraceae, is the largest family in the world, with around 32,000 species and about 900 genera. The orchid family is the second largest, and the grass family, the Poaceae, is the fifth largest family, but the most economically important family in the world because it includes many essential food crops such as rice, maize, and cereal crops such as wheat, barley, oats, and millet. In contrast, the poor little ginkgo family has just one genus and one lonely species, Ginkgo biloba, the ginkgo tree. You've learned about genus and species in earlier lectures, so let's take a look at infraspecific taxa. Plant species in the wild can exhibit variation in their physical characteristics, both within a population and between different populations in different geographic areas. These variations in characteristics within a species can result in taxonomists using three subtaxa below the rank of species. The three subtaxa are subspecies, variety, and form, and they're referred to as infraspecific ranks. These infraspecific ranks are used to classify plants that have small differences that should be recognized, but really aren't big enough to warrant the plant being classified as a different species. You may see these subtaxa quite often, especially subspecies and variety, on nursery websites, botanical garden signs, and plant labels, so it's important for you to know what they mean. Let's look at subspecies first. Subspecies is usually applied to plants from geographically separate populations that have slightly different phenotypes. Phenotype refers to a set of observable differences, and in plants could refer to differences in growth habit, flower color, leaf size, or plant size. Subspecies is often used interchangeably with variety by taxonomists. When you're writing the subspecies name, you prefix it with the abbreviation SSP, or subsp. Using SSP can easily be confused with the way in which the plural of the word species is abbreviated, which is SPP. So it's better to use subsp, I think, in order to avoid any confusion. You may well see the abbreviation SSP used on nursery websites though, so you need to know what it means, and remember, don't confuse it with the plural of species. An example of the use of subspecies is the California native subshrub Monodella villosa, coyote mint, which has 3 subspecies. Looking at the map of California on the right, you can see that Monodella villosa, subspecies obispoensis, has a distribution restricted to California's south-central coast in San Luis Obispo and North Santa Barbara counties. Monodella villosa subspecies franciscana has a distribution in the San Francisco Bay from Marin County south to Santa Cruz County. Monodella villosa subspecies villosa has a much wider distribution from northwest California south through to the central coast. The differences between these 3 subspecies are the size of their inflorescences, the color of the corolla, and the degree of hairiness of their leaves. The next species subtaxon is variety, or the Latin word varietas. This is used when there are minor physical differences within a species, and in contrast to subspecies, plants with these differences don't occur in clearly defined geographic or ecological distributions. Variety is usually abbreviated to just var when you're writing the plant name. For example, Ceanothus thyrciflorus var griseus and Ceanothus thyrciflorus var thyrciflorus. The differences between these 2 varieties are based on whether or not the leaf margins curl under and the degree of hairiness of the leaves. In the photos you can see Ceanothus thyrciflorus variety thyrciflorus, California blue blossom, whose leaf margins don't curl under and there's very little hair on the underside of the leaves. Be really careful not to confuse variety with the term cultivar, which means cultivated variety, and you'll learn more about this in another lecture. Taxonomically, the term variety has a very specific meaning, but in horticulture and agriculture, people can be really loose and sloppy with terminology, and it's really common to hear people misapplying the term variety. Some people will refer to any plant, whatever its rank, as a variety. For example, a friend or family member may say, "Wow, you've got so many varieties of plants in your yard," when what they actually mean is species. Even plant professionals, who should know better, misuse the term variety. And I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not you want to educate and correct them. And lastly, there's form, or the Latin word forma, which tends not to be used very often these days. When it is used, it's applied to plants within a species that have very small, relatively minor physical differences, perhaps a variation in flower color, leaf size, or leaf color. When we're writing it, the form is usually abbreviated to a lowercase letter f with a period after it. For example, Rosa rugosa F. alba, which is the name for a white flowering form of the usually pink flowering Rosa rugosa. These differences in plant characteristics that result in the use of these infraspecific ranks appear to be really small. So, are they really that important? Many taxonomists these days believe they're not important, while others put forward taxonomic arguments for keeping them. It's often joked that taxonomists are divided into lumpers and splitters. Some want to lump everything together in a particular rank, while others want to split everything into lots of subtaxa. Let me give you a couple of practical examples now of why these subtaxa might be important when you're selecting plants for a landscape project. They may be important if you're trying to exactly match an existing planting. Perhaps a plant in a mass planting of a particular species has died and you need to replace it. Aesthetically, it could look really weird or out of place if you select the wrong infraspecific taxon. For example, you'll sometimes see the California native evergreen shrub Ceanothus gloriosus used as a ground cover, and you can see this plant in the picture on the right. This species has 3 varieties, which are recognized based on leaf size and form. 2 of the varieties form low-growing mats or mounds, while one has an upright growth habit. If you were to order just Ceanothus gloriosus from a nursery, you could end up with the wrong variety. So in a case like this, make sure you give the nursery the full botanical name, including the variety, so you get the plant you really want and need. Subtaxa can be really important in habitat restoration and revegetation projects, and ornamental landscapes using native plants, especially when they're close to natural open spaces. Using the correct locally occurring subtaxa helps maintain the genetic integrity of local populations of plants. It can also help protect the functioning of the ecosystem and potentially the viability of plant populations. In the table on the right, you can see a comparison of 2 of the physical characteristics of the California native subshrub coyote mint, Monodella villosa. In an earlier slide, you saw the different geographic distributions of these 3 subspecies. Looking at the table here, you can see that there are slight differences in flower color between the subspecies obispoensis and subspecies villosa. There are also slight differences in the size of the flower cluster between the 3 subspecies. It's possible, although I don't know for sure, that these differences may be associated with the pollinators of these plants within their native ranges. So by planting a subspecies beyond its native range, you may be planting a plant with flowers that are not accessible to pollinators in that area. And this could result in a loss of viability of a plant population, because the plants won't be pollinated, and without that there's no fertilization and no seeds. The pollinating organism may also be depending on that plant as a food source, so it's possible you may be harming the ecosystem if you don't plant the correct locally occurring plant. That's the end of this lecture. I hope you now have a better understanding of infraspecific taxa and an appreciation of how they might be important when you're selecting plants for a project.